You're listening to the Braver Angels podcast, a new way of talking politics. I'm your host, Alma Cook. Today, I'm joined by two remarkable women. Susan Breaux, the president of the Heather Heyer Foundation, an organization that she co-founded in the wake of the 2017 Charlottesville rally, at which her daughter, Heather Heyer, was killed while counter-protesting. Susan, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Also joining us today is Becca Stevens, a singer-songwriter known for blurring the lines between pop, jazz, indie rock, and folk music. She has worked, and I say this as a fan, with some of the most respected musical minds of our day, including Jacob Collier, Esperanza Spalding, and a singer I've adored and drawn from myself throughout my own music career, Gretchen Parlato, which is how I actually discovered Becca a decade ago. Becca, it's such an honor to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thanks for having me, Alma.
Now, there's a common thread here. I didn't just reach into a hat and pick an activist and pick a musician and decide to start a conversation about the power of music and politics. You two are united by the tragic death of Susan's daughter at the Charlottesville rally. And I wanted to hear first, through Susan's eyes and then through Becca's eyes, what happened that day in Charlottesville and what it inspired in you. So Susan, go ahead. And I imagine this is still extremely painful for you, so please take your time.
Honestly, this gets talked about all the time, regularly. It's just the space that I live and breathe in now. But Heather went to stand with her friends that day as a peaceful counter-protester. She and her friends were a part of a large contingent of people that stayed away from the park, but specifically were on the opposite side of the downtown mall from the violence. The event had been called off by the governor's office and people were leaving. The group was relaxed. They were headed to the downtown mall to kind of celebrate the fact that the violence had been stopped and that people had been leaving. And as they started up 4th Street, which is actually basically an alleyway, a one-way alleyway, Mr. Fields, who had been sitting at the top of the hill, having pulled partway down, saw that the road was blocked, backed up, sat there for a few seconds, saw the crowd coming up the hill, was resentful, according to his own testimony, of what they stood for, and chose to accelerate into the crowd. Heather was the only one killed, but there were probably about 40 people injured, 20 pretty seriously.
That's really heavy. That's really, really heavy. So what has your life looked like since then, Susan?
Aside from getting through the funeral and the initial grief and I just made a choice that I was not going to waste the opportunity of her life, but use it as a teaching moment, use it as a call to action. And gradually my life has evolved from there. I speak. I have started writing. I never viewed myself as a writer. I advocate for social justice. I'm learning how to be an ally. I thought I was one, and then I've learned since that no, it's not that easy. I am a different person than I was when she was killed. Life has changed a lot. I still live in the same trailer I lived in. I still have some of the same friends, although some walked away from me. I'm still me, but yet I'm not me. I've been changed in a million different ways. And if that can help the country move past racial injustice to a place of justice and to a place of reparation and reconciliation, so be it. I can't change the fact that she died, but I can change how I deal with it and what use we make of that platform that was handed to me.
Yeah. So you're now the president and co-founder of the Heather Heyer Foundation, which we can
Yes.
talk about a little bit later. So that's how you took that pain and transformed it into momentum.
People kept sending us small amounts of money, and I said the family should not be taking this money. This money should be used for something that Heather stood for, and that's why we formed the foundation.
You wanted to put it toward what Heather lost her life standing for.
Yes.
Becca, tell us about your own processing of these events and what it spurred on for you. So Susan took it and now this foundation exists that didn't exist before. How did you digest those events?
I remember hearing it on the news back in 2017 and just thinking, God, that's awful. And, I wish there was something I could do, and thinking about it for a few days. But then actually David Crosby was the one who brought it back to the front of my focus. About a year and a half ago, we were on the tour bus. I'm in a band with him called the Lighthouse Band. And David and I write songs together, and sometimes we'll send each other ideas for songs. And we were on the tour bus, and he said, I keep thinking about this moment in history, this moment on August 17th, 2017, this moment when Heather Heyer, a peaceful protester, locked eyes with the driver of a vehicle. He has this David has like a very cinematic approach to songwriting. He sees the scene before he writes the song, which has been very inspiring to me. And he said, Becca, I think there's a song there in that moment. And I said, okay, I'll take the challenge and sort of see what happens. And I was first drawn to the challenge, but then I think what really hooked me was how this feeling of there being something that was so much bigger than me and finding an appropriate way to approach it. So the first thing I did was I researched as much as I could, because I felt like I was not worthy to tell the story. I felt like who am I to come in and touch this? And so I read as much as I could, and the more I read, the less it felt right to give the song any focus to Mr. Fields or anyone's name for that matter. Like the more I sort of read and also listened to my own muse, which when I wrote this song was Heather and also was Susan, just getting these sort of like energetic frequencies telling me, what to stay away from. And that, of course, is rooted in my own goals as a songwriter for this song was to come from a place of love rather than divisiveness, just as Heather was, like I didn't want to come in and tell a different story than what she was standing for, So I spent a lot of time trying to find the way in. And then one day, after a couple weeks of turning it, the idea popped into my head that a natural way in would be to tell it sort of from her voice through little letters that she's exchanging with her mother. And I saw them as being basically text messages, like little text messages. And I was really moved to find out when I finally this year, just a few months ago, connected with Susan, and she said that type of communication was very common for them, and even that she called her Ma. I don't know. It was, I think, for a lot of songwriters, I can only speak for myself. My most effective work is done when I feel that I'm not the one controlling the experience. When I step aside and follow whatever feels like it's coming through naturally. So it took a couple weeks to get there, but then once it did, it came pretty easily.
So the song is called Heather's Letters to Her Mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on your album Wonder Bloom. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Now, Susan, I believe you first listened to this song, as Becca mentioned, this year after my colleague Micah Hendler interviewed you both for his Forbes piece earlier this fall. Did you know about Becca's song prior to that, or was that the first that you had heard of it, Susan?
No, I hadn't heard anything of it. A lot of people wrote a lot of songs, and I've listened to a lot of songs, and I thought, oh, okay, another song. And they're all good. But this one stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, oh my God, Heather wrote this song with her.
Because it
as she
felt
said,
that
the wording and the message were all so spot on.
Yeah, it really felt authentic to her voice.
It did. It felt as if Heather were talking to me in this song.
That's incredible. I can only imagine how that must feel as a songwriter, Becca, to hear that. Authenticity would be such a challenge. I mean, when Micah first shared the article with me and the story of you two connecting, I got such chills. I'm just thinking about, as a songwriter myself, what it would be like to handle that kind of story, the kind of care and attention that it would take, trying to be delicate, but still trying to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I thought of Susan so much because, I mean, obviously Heather is a muse. She was a muse for the song. I felt like, a sense of her kind of watching over in a way. And there were moments where I would try stuff and I felt her being like, don't touch that, And then other moments where she was like more inviting or, and I'm not a psychic, or I don't like, I don't have any superpowers or anything like that. It's more just like the way that you listen to your muse when you're creating. And but more so, I would say that Susan was the muse because she's still here and she's dealing every day with what happened, and I wanted to find a way to, Susan said it really beautifully, I'm an optimist and I like the idea that nothing's wasted. Even the most horrible times can be made into an opportunity for a call to action or an invitation to learn how to be an ally and how to create something better. So yeah.
Yeah.
It feels pretty good
sure.
but again, I mean, it feels good and it brings tears to my eyes, but it's also not about me, which I think makes it feel even better.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, I think one of my favorite aspects of being a musician is being able to recycle these terrible situations that we all live through in varying degrees, and immediately, maybe after weeks or months, but roughly immediately see the good fruit that they're able to bear. We have this thing to hold and listen to, this song. And I often wonder how people who are not musicians even cope with the everyday pain of life, because they don't have that ability just to immediately take these pieces and stitch them together into something beautiful. Of course, we all have different ways that we do that, but the arts are so direct and tangible, and in this case, a very chilling way to make the most of our pain. You did a really wonderful thing in this piece. There was this one line that I was wondering about, and it seems like you've mentioned a few times that using Heather as a muse and this guiding sense of, this is where I want to go, this is where I don't want to go, to respect her memory and respect the story. There's this one line, "Mama, you've got a new job from now on." And I was wondering where that came from. I mean, Susan, I can only imagine how that line hits you because you're taking that charge so seriously. And I want to commend you, first of all, for turning your grief and your anger into something tangible, because that is not an easy thing. But Becca, is there anything that you wanted to share about where that line came from?
Absolutely. There's a moment in every verse, at least, that's rooted in something that I read about her life. And that one is a perfect example of that. As we were saying, I didn't want to get into the darkness of the event in the song. I wanted to end the penultimate voice at the height of empowerment and joy. What they were feeling before the the horrible stuff. And then in the final verse, the one that you're referencing, that's the silver lining, I guess. It's sort of that verse is supposed to be her voice from beyond the grave, looking down to her mother and saying, well, it's your turn to pick up where I left off, And I like this idea that it was sort of it sort of makes it feel like this golden baton is passed on, and she has no choice but to take over the work. And that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I got the same silver lining sense at the end of the record. There's two versions. There's your album version on Wonder Bloom, and then there's the NPR Tiny Desk version, which I also love. But on the album version, at the end of the song, you have a group of children's voices, I think, that come in and take over that refrain. The idea being, I think, that there's a new generation rising up to answer that call and that challenge. Was that your intention, Becca, with those children's voices?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. They're the voice of the next generation. They're our future presidents. And I like to also include family in my recordings. Those are my sister's kids, my brother's kids, and Nick Hard, who co-produced and mixed the album, his daughters. And hearing my nieces and nephews and their little voices at the end of a song always brings tears to my eyes anyway. And there was a song on my last album, on Regina, the last song on that record. I did something similar on a Stevie Wonder cover. So it was also sort of like a nod to that.
Yeah, it was really sweet. It was a beautiful way to close it out. And you definitely captured what you're going for with that. So this is a question maybe a little bit broader for either one of you. And it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is the role of art in social movements. Some people strongly believe that the role of art is to make us forget our differences and forget these pains that we have and just come together and move our feet. And other people believe also very strongly that artists have a responsibility and a calling to write directly about social issues and enact change that way. Susan, you mentioned that so many people wrote songs about the Charlottesville demonstrations. Is this something that you've thought at all about in the last few years and stewed over?
Well, years before all of this happened, I had been an elementary school teacher, and I have always believed you use your gifts that you are given and your styles of learning and expression to do whatever you can in the world. And there is a place for happiness and joy and celebration in art, but I strongly believe that art is also imperative as a way to touch the hearts of people. Music and art touch parts of our heart and mind that nothing else can reach. And I strongly respect and encourage artists who use their artistic abilities for social justice causes. I could talk till I'm blue in the face, but if you can't reach that part of the heart and mind that art touches, nobody's going to hear me.
Becca, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree?
I do. I agree very much also with the role of the arts in education of all ages. I think it's so important, and I don't think that I would be who I am today. I know for sure I wouldn't be who I am today, and I wouldn't be happy, I don't think, if I hadn't had that artistic nurturing and been encouraged to take the path that I did, because it is such an important part of my own self-expression and just role on the planet. And as far as my my views of its purpose, of course, that's subjective, but I think it's there to inspire and to create individual and collective inspiration, whether it's about a happy thing or a sad thing. It's there to awaken and hold the truth up to different lights, and I think also importantly to create a platform to express things that are difficult to put into words. And I think that is similar in a way to what Susan is saying about these things that nothing else can reach, like these things that they don't even really belong in word form, but somehow when you put it to music and then it comes out and it touches you in the way that it's supposed to. And I think it brings people together. I think music is a lifting force that brings people together, people who might have wildly different beliefs, but they can sit together and cry to the same song, you know?
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you've been working on this year in light of everything that's gone on in 2020 that's relevant to current events?
Yeah, I've been teaching a lot. When all of the tours were canceled, I scrambled and was lucky to have like a great I have a great fan base, and people were interested in talking about songwriting. So I've been spending hours most days on Zoom, sort of supporting other people through the process of songwriting, and doing a lot of songwriting courses that are recurring, and I've found that it's deepened my own understanding of and approach to songwriting by working with all these young songwriters. Well, songwriters of all ages.
Yeah, so people can actually sign up on your website. Is that right? To co-write with
Sure.
you in a hour sessions?
I mean, it's more of a Sherpa session. I wouldn't say
Sherpa.
we're like
I like that word.
like I'm guiding and helping coax things out of them. But yeah.
That's interesting. And then, I mean, this is maybe a technical question more for songwriters, and then do you share a credit on their work when it's released, or?
No.
You don't? Okay. No. So it really is more of a Sherpa instructor role.
Yeah.
That's super, super interesting. Well, I wanted to ask about another line in the song, which also speaks to just your broader vision for what America can be. Becca, the refrain of Heather's letters to her mother is this line, "This is not the America that we know." And I wanted to ask you what that means to you. Just so who is the America you know? Where do you see her face most clearly and vividly day to day?
I mean, the American ideal, right, is this land of the free where anyone is welcome, anyone can take refuge and make themselves at home, and it's a place for all people. And the beauty of these ideals is not just the ideals themselves, but the fact that they apply to everyone. Everyone. They're supposed to, you know? And that ideal gets lost when people are arguing about who's less deserving of this right that's supposed to be equal, you know? And I've felt that heavily this year in light of the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all the other hundreds and hundreds of people who have been killed unjustly, and the protests that have been happening this year. And then also just a year sitting at home during a pandemic and seeing how the pandemic affects different people of different classes unequally. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and that there's supposed to be this equality where we're all in it together and we're all holding each other up. And this year, I've just felt that we're far from that, or maybe we're getting closer, and that makes you realize how far we still are. I don't know, but that part of the song is, the other refrain that the little kids are singing, which is sort of one voice of the people, is "We've got nothing without love." And in the first verse, I pretend that it's something that Susan used to say to Heather, and then Heather says it in the second verse, and it's like this refrain that's passed along through the verses. And then the other refrain is, "This is not the America we know," which is sort of the other side of the coin. It's the dark side of the coin, and it is there to balance the sweet with the bitter. And yeah.
That's beautiful. Susan, who is the America that you know? How have you seen her face in the past, and how have you seen her face unfold into the future, especially throughout the work that your foundation is doing?
Well, it strikes me that the America that I know or thought I knew is not the real America to begin with. Speaking from a place of privilege, I saw America one way, and it's been entirely a different America all along for many people. And I, for a million different reasons, was unaware of that, unseeing of that, unfeeling of that. Heather helped me see some of that. I see it even more clearly now and continue to grow in that knowledge as I kind of shake off the white anesthesia that we swim in. I would like to see America live up to the ideals that it promised in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. I don't know that we've ever had that vision fully, but that's the vision that we thought we had, many of us, and I would like to see us continue to head that direction.
So the Heather Heyer Foundation is oriented specifically towards scholarships. Is that correct? Do you want to say more about what you're doing over there to help build the America that you envision?
Sure. The Heather Heyer Foundation specifically supports activists who are dedicated to positive social change, and that takes a variety of forms. We currently have been somewhat limited in that we only offer $1,000 scholarships. We've offered 8 for the last 2 years, and then 3 the first year. The scholarships applications have also tended to be local, although we have at least one national scholarship, and as well as an adult and college scholarship. The board is looking to expand that as we grow our endowment. We hope to eventually be able to offer at least a full ride scholarship to one young activist. But you can find more information about that, and you can actually apply online this year at www.heatherheyerfoundation.com. And that's open until January 15th. And they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and I beg to differ. I figured out how to put the whole process online.
Yeah, I was very impressed looking through your website and the accolades that you seem to have collected in the last couple of years. What kind of, you say activist, and I wanted to tease out a little bit more about that. What are you looking to steward with those scholarship resources? What kind of person is the type that would apply for this scholarship?
I created a rubric for the scoring committee to use, and we are looking particularly for people who probably have either participated in someone else's campaign very fully, or have created a campaign of their own. It has been anything from meeting food insecurity to one person who won this past year was a transgendered young person who worked with the police. We've had environmental people who have worked to bring communities together for conversation. It just varies. It's more the quality and level of activism, and it has to be positive, nonviolent change. I did that because Heather and I, neither one were fighters. It's just not our thing. And I believe that people can accomplish much more in conversation and in action than they can with physical violence. And so, yeah, it's pretty broad. I mean, if people want more information, they can email me at info@heatherheyerfoundation.com if they have questions. But right now, people always apply at the last second. So the last time I looked, there were 15 applicants for 8 scholarships. So I'm saying, people, get your applications in, please.
Yes, I remember the scholarship application process very well. Definitely last minute was the way. Becca, what's coming down the pike for you in this next year? Susan is explaining the direction that her foundation is going in. Is your music taking a specific... I mean, of course, there's so much unknown. As a musician myself, I'm like, what is happening? Touring is still canceled. None of my friends are working. So what's next for you?
One of the silver linings of this year for people like me is finally being home and getting to finish, recording projects that have been just sitting there for months and months and years. So I've been working on like 4 different records, a lot of collaborations, and I managed to get out of the country this year, which my husband and I had to get special permission, an invitation from the Portuguese government just to board the plane and then do the whole rigmarole with the COVID tests. And I was glad to see how high the security was, actually. And we made it to Portugal, where we worked on a record with Justin Stanton, Gisela Joao, Louis Cato, and Mike League, who is
Mike
the leader
League,
of
Snarky Puppy. I'm such a Snarky Puppy fan. When I saw him,
also,
as a collaborator, I was just ecstatic.
And he also is the founder of Ground Up, the music label that puts out my records and is like a family to me. And so this project was a songwriting collaboration, where all these different writers wrote 2 songs together. Each person wrote a song with the other person. Just one song. What am I talking about? Each of the 5 people wrote a song with each of the other 4 people, making 10 songs. So we wrote and recorded these songs all at a vineyard in Portugal. It's very fancy. And then from there we drove all the way across Spain and worked on another record Mike and I wrote the music for, with a group called The Secret Trio, which is a Turkish Macedonian trio that's based here in New Jersey. I say here, even though I'm in Brooklyn, but you get the gist. So we worked on that for a couple weeks, and then drove to another area of Spain where my husband and I finished mixing a record that we recorded years ago of my music with string quartet accompaniment. So all these different arrangers made string quartet arrangements of my songs. So it was like a very eventful trip, and made some videos while I was out there, and have been like having fun experimenting, making videos here too, figuring out ways to make music videos from home. And
it's been a year of finishing up recording projects, I would say, for a lot of us. I've been sitting on this album for like 6 years, Becca. I wrote a lot. I should. And it came down recently I made a bet with my best friend, who's my producer. So I have to get in my 10 hours a week or else with him. And it's been a good motivator. But yeah, it sounds like you've got a good retreat in, which is awesome. How has it been on social? This is almost like a personal question, but I hate dealing with social media as a musician. And during the pandemic, that's your entire relationship with your audience is social media.
Yeah.
Has that been challenging for you, or does that come pretty naturally? What would you say?
I try not to spend too much time on it recreationally. That's where I start to get, sucked into the rabbit hole of all kinds of weird feelings when you pick up your phone and then you look at the clock and you're like, where did that hour go? And I try to just use it very practically but still authentically. So I'll sit at the computer and write what I'm going to say and then copy paste it so I'm not like on my phone for, I try to approach it like a visual blog of moments that I think other people would care about or that I care about, things that are important to me.
Mm-hmm. But still kind of keeping it at an arm's length, which I think is healthy.
Yeah, most of the time. Sometimes I'll say, I'm going to get sucked in. But I actually really don't like Facebook. Like as an app, I don't connect with it. It doesn't suck me in. And I've never gotten into the YouTube rabbit hole, thankfully. Twitter, I don't understand how to get a reaction out of Twitter.
Twitter is confusing as a musician. There's not a lot. It's actually the perfect place for me because I'm in this funny space as like a musician and someone who's interested. Well, I own a business in the energy sector as well. And because I live in these two worlds, there's kind of, like there's a little more intellectual stuff going on, I guess, on Twitter.
Yeah,
but
definitely a good place to find out what's going on before the news even posts about it. If you, there have been many times when I'll hear gunshots in Bed-Stuy and I go to Twitter first to see what's happening before it's like,
100%. Yeah. In LA, a big thing to do is you think there might be an earthquake and you immediately jump on Twitter and you can verify whether there are thousands of people across the city who feel the same way. Okay, well, Becca Stevens, Susan Bro, thank you so much again for joining us on the Braver Angels podcast. Susan, you mentioned we can learn more about the Heather Heyer Foundation at www.heatherheyerfoundation.org. Is that correct?
You can use .com or .org. Or the person who originally set it up did .com without thinking. I was like, but we finally bought up the rights to .org. That got held ransom for about 3 years, so we just recently got it.
Domain wars. I'm familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Either .org or .com, Heather Heyer Foundation. Anyone who wants to apply for one of those scholarships. Do you know when the deadline is for the next application?
January 15th.
January 15th. Wonderful. Let's get the young activists out there and applying. And Becca,
Even old ones.
Even old ones. That's right. Lest I discriminate. Becca, we just talked about social media. Where can we find your music online or follow you on social media?
My website is beccastevens.com. My Instagram is Becca Stevens BSB, which stands for Becca Stevens Band. So, and same thing with Twitter, Becca Stevens BSB. Or you can find all those things on my website, YouTube, all that stuff.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to play the song that we've been talking about this whole time. For our listeners here at the end, Heather's Letters to Her Mother, which I hope you will check out on Becca's album, Wonder Bloom. Thanks again, ladies.
Thank you.
Hey Mom, I got a new job, keeping me happy, fighting for the rights of the ones who need it the most. It's what I always wanted.